He's not read his Wittgenstein. He's not read any Wittgenstein, and that is humiliating, right? I hate what you do. I hate your music. I hate your art, and I hate you. Shut up. Stop doing it. Jacob Collier. He's bloody brilliant, isn't he? A lot of people love him. A lot of people hate him. I think I have something useful to say, hopefully. Either way, I'm going to go through my notes, and I will ramble through them vaguely, and then I'm going to edit it down and make myself look really smart. Because I'm sure Jacob Collier wouldn't need notes to improvise an amazing video essay that in some way metrically reflected the circle of fifths or something like that. But I'm an abject moron, and I do need my notes to guide me through this a little bit. So, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people really hate him. I feel like a lot of people really like him, and that's perfectly fair. I guess there's always going to be artists that really elicit that kind of very strong extreme response either way. Personally, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm ambivalent. I have mixed feelings towards him. I think a lot of what he does is amazing. He's obviously so incredibly good at music. You know, he speaks music better than I speak English. That's probably how I'd put it. Like, he's just so fluent. I don't think there's many people, maybe no one has existed who's quite as fluent in music as him. But I do think his songwriting could be quite weak. I don't think my opinions here are particularly groundbreaking. I feel like a lot of people feel this way, but I also feel like he gets a load of negative press that he maybe doesn't deserve. So we'll talk through things, generally speaking. We'll react to some of his music, but I want to start in an interesting place. The reviews on Rate Your Music for Jacob Collier, and I think hopefully I'll use that as a springboard to kind of point. We'll see if I can make it effectively. Let's see how this goes, right? The Rate Your Music reviews are really, not uniformly, but uniformly, that's not a word, uniformly, no, not entirely, like invariably, but quite negative. The Rate Your Music rating is 2.06 out of 5 from like 1,000 ratings. So it seems to be, well, it seems to me that there's, sorry, the first review that I can see here just says, progressive wank. I don't know, I find this really funny. It feels like the reaction from the kind of self-serious, almost like self-declared like music nerd sector of the internet is a sort of like, shut the fuck up, Jacob Collier, I hate what you do, I hate your music, I hate your art, and I hate you, shut up, stop doing it. It's very funny. I do kind of get it in a way. He's Jacob Collier, right? He's got this like certain like impish, boyish kind of like vibe to him, and his music is very, very distinctive, but it's also, I don't know, I don't want to get into too much detail on this, but like using this as a springboard, right? So what do I think is going on here, right? Because clearly he's incredible, and he has like an amazing ability to play so many styles and instruments and bring it all together in a way that does work. It clearly does work on a level, but clearly a lot of people are reacting strongly to it. And yeah, people are maybe a little bit too triggered, and I think I know why that might be in a kind of way. It's hard to articulate, but let's go through it bit by bit, right? So I think some of the common themes that go through a lot of these reviews of this Jesse 4 album on Rate Your Music are like ideas that he's cringe. He's very cringy because he's very earnest. Like this, again, as I said before, impish, boyish kind of energy, very, very optimistic. Some people say Disney-esque. Don't entirely agree with that comparison. I think he is very positive, yeah, certainly. So yeah, cringe, that's one thing. Just self-indulgent, and he's just trying to play really sophisticated and difficult just for the sake of showing off. I also don't think that's true. I don't think that's very fair at all. And another one, which I do think is much more accurate and to the point, actually, is that he has poor taste. And I think it's a really interesting frame. I kind of want to jump off that actually first, and we'll look at we'll look at something Jacob Collier himself has said about this. Yeah, people say he has no taste. He does, he has all these ideas, but he doesn't have this like filter, which is taste, getting in the way of them and saying, oh yeah, maybe this, maybe not that. And I think that might be true. The problem is when people say it, and when most people hear that someone has no taste, what is usually intended and interpreted from that is that they have bad taste. So to say that someone has no taste is the same most of the time as saying that someone has bad taste. Like, look at the way they dress, they have no taste, something like that. I don't think Jacob Collier has bad taste. I think he is without taste. I don't think taste is really the kind of, it's not really the thing that motivates him or shapes what he does as a musician. And I think that is inexorably tied into like his prodigious skill at music. I think if he had any more taste, he would not be as good at what he does. And I think at the end of the day, I think I'm kind of coming to this conclusion that it's kind of the point. And I think this is an important thing to remember. This is something I've thought for a while. I remember years ago at university having a conversation with someone. And usually, when someone says they really like something and someone else says they really hate that thing, there's something that they can both agree on, right? So if I'm like, I love spicy food, I do. I love really spicy food. I think it's great. And then I, know loads of people who don't, and I've cooked things before and they've eaten it and they've been like, it's a bit too spicy, and they're like, oh, it's spicy, it really hurts my tongue. And obviously, when something is spicy, it hurts your tongue. And for me, that is the entire point of it. Obviously, that's the point. There's nothing else to what spice is. It hurts your tongue. That's what it does. It is pain. So for the people who like spicy food and the people who don't like spicy food, actually, the core of their like and dislike is exactly the same. And I do feel this is true for the people who hate Jacob Collier and for the people who love Jacob Collier. And it does come down to this like tastelessness. I don't think he's heard a musical noise he didn't love. It's this kind of universal inclusion of all sound and all music. And in fact, I'll edit it in here. There's a little clip that I heard of him saying, there's no good music, and that's a terrible impression. There's no good music and bad music.
There's no such thing as good music and bad music.
He does go on to kind of further explain that point, which kind of adds some kind of nuance to it. But I think he's being quite earnest. I think from his point of view, there is no such thing as good music or bad music. And like, he's right. It's all like subjective. It's all completely personal opinion. There's nothing factual about one person's opinion or another person's opinion. However, most people do not agree with that kind of statement. Obviously, most people very much think that there's such a thing as good music and bad music. And so any individual's taste is the most important guiding principle in their kind of relationship with music. For the vast majority of people, like, their taste defines them. And that's just not just true for music, but food and art and like sexual proclivities.
Disengage safety protocols and run program.
Whatever it is, like, our tastes define us in really important ways. And because he doesn't really have taste in the way that most of us have, that can either be really weird and really alienating, or it is actually the best thing about him because he's got this all-encompassing kind of musical brain. Either way, it is the point of him, right? And because he has that attitude, he just has, he just loves it all. And I don't think there's much of an ego going on with him. There must be on some level because everyone has an ego, but this is why I don't believe the whole like, oh, he's just shredding. He's just trying to play as fast as possible to impress people. I genuinely think, and he says this himself, I think he's being completely honest when he says this, it's all just his personal self-expression, and that's just the way he does it. If you have a super high level of competency, then what is just normal to you can just look like bewilderingly complex to everyone else, and that's just the reality of it. I mean, I know for a fact, me speaking English good, for example, I'm quite good at the English language in terms of my ability to speak it, and I've definitely been in situations where I would just use a word and someone else has perceived me as being like a pretentious dickhead because I've used that word, but it's just a word I use. And I'm not trying to be like self-aggrandizing when I say that. It's just, do you know what I mean? It's beyond the point. Anyway, like let's start by thinking a little bit more specifically about some specific Jacob Collier tracks. Maybe we'll listen to them a bit, and I think you'll find that I am at points defending him and at points being quite critical of him. I think there's a lot to criticize about him. I don't think a lot of people will be, I don't think a lot of people will find my opinion particularly out there or groundbreaking. It's pretty standard. I think that he's an amazing musician, but maybe not a great songwriter. But I do have some thoughts on that I think might be interesting to people. We'll find out. So let's start by listening to his cover of Bridge Over Troubled Water, just a little bit, because people have really strong reactions to this again. I'm not keen on it personally myself. I don't know. Maybe I'll be more keen upon my like fifth listen to it.
When you're weary, feeling small, I will lay me down.
I hate to sound like a boomer, but I liked it when soul singers would just belt it out. Like, you don't have to do all the the twiddly bits, right? It's really impressive. It is really impressive. That's just my personal taste. Actually, this reminds me, right? So this is like a ridiculously over the top cover of a Simon and Garfunkel song, obviously. And I have to admit, I am guilty of liking a very stupid Simon and Garfunkel cover, America by Yes. So yeah, when I'm criticizing Jacob Collier's lack of taste with some of his arrangements, I'm perfectly aware that from another point of view, there's a huge lack of taste in my enjoyment of other things. I shouldn't even have to preface things with that because it seems really obvious. But if you've not heard yet, maybe I'll edit in a little bit. Yes, did a cover in like the early 70s of Simon and Garfunkel's America. And to be honest, this is why I can't hate Jacob too much. Because like, although I do agree with the criticism generally, like this song didn't need this treatment, blah, blah, blah. The question of whether a song needs a certain treatment is beside the point entirely. He has the right to do it. But yeah, I love Yes's cover of America. And it is completely tasteless. It's completely gratuitous. It's very silly. But for me, that works and this doesn't work. Why? I don't know. I'm not going to over-intellectualize it. I think people should just accept that maybe they just don't like him and not try to just like give too many excuses for it. I mean, it's cool. I mean, there's tons of stuff going on. Like the vocal arrangements are ridiculous. There's so many things going on that I'm sure I don't understand and will never understand. And I do like that about it. I think that's amazing. But I guess, yeah, it's weird. I guess it just doesn't inspire much in me. Yeah, I just find it hard to engage with a cover like this, or a song like this. It's like an arrangement like this, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to put my finger on it. I don't know how to react to some of these songs sometimes. I've listened to this album a few times now, and this is a perfect example of something where it's like, well, it's a good song, it's a good melody, it's good lyrics. The arrangement is certainly competent at the very least. There's nothing wrong with it. I guess this is why I feel like a 1-star or 2-star rating or whatever people giving it on Rate Your Music is, it kind of does baffle me because it doesn't elicit that strong of emotion from me. I don't think it could. It's good. It works. However, I think there are places, if we're going to criticize him for anything, right, it's not necessarily his musicianship or his lack of taste, if you accept kind of my framing of it earlier. But his lyrics are, I think his lyrics are pretty shocking. I think his lyrics, we should be able to agree that his lyrics are pretty bad. So if we just listen, which song shall we listen to here? A Rock Somewhere.
I'm on a rock somewhere.
There's two main things, I think. His propensity towards rhyme, like rhyming everything, quite frankly obnoxious. Like he'll just rhyme every couplet, it seems. Well, not literally every single couplet, but he just loves to do it constantly. And there's no like semantic link between the two couplets, or between the rhyming. So he'll just rhyme things. He'll just rhyme 2 lines because maybe he feels it needs to rhyme.
I'm ringing the old church bell. Forgotten how it goes, but it feels like hell.
But there's no like thought behind the rhyme. Like does one line of the couplet expand upon the previous line, or am I just rhyming because I feel I should rhyme? You do not have to rhyme, by the way. Rhyme is just another like thing that you can do, but some people just get into the head to just rhyme everything, and it is frankly obnoxious. Jacob Collier is one of the worst kind of culprits for this. Yeah, sorry, I'm not keen. He does it in, I feel like, almost every song on this album. There'll be some kind of rhyme that is just completely unnecessary. The bigger problem, right, this song does it a little bit. Again, it's like a tendency with him to go, not always, some songs that certainly don't do this, but like he loves universal themes. It's kind of like big universalist ideas. This song is A Rock Somewhere. And universalist songs, and when I say that, just, songs that are about like being a human, big topic, big universal abstract things that every human does, or it can engage with, like love and life and like the meaning of life, all these kind of topics, and existence and our place on planet Earth. These are really, really, really hard to sing about, to write lyrics about, because you can just end up talking in like huge generalities, big abstract terms without anything specific going on. So what do I mean, right? So I'm on a rock somewhere, it's the only one I know, and I know it well, and somehow I know you're there, and I'm waiting on the world. I'm ringing the old church bell. I've forgotten how it goes, but it feels like hell. There are those rhymes. I don't think those rhymes really, there's nothing wrong with them, I guess. He's not the only person who does this. If we're talking great songwriters, Paul McCartney can do this quite a bit. Paul McCartney's not the best lyricist ever, but he can also pull out some amazing lyrics. But, you know, Stevie Wonder does it a bit. I don't know. Like, all songwriters will do it a bit where you think that rhyme was not necessary. But Jacob Collier does it all the time. Hate to do this in a way, but I kind of feel like it's necessary to, like, compare, like, a Jacob Collier song to other songs that do these, like, big universalist themes, right? I hate doing it because every song, any two songs are going to do different things. So to say that one song does this thing, which is good, and this song doesn't do this thing, it doesn't demonstrate that one is bad or one is good, because good songs can do totally different things and you're not obliged to do something that another good song did. But just as an example of how these things are done well. So anyway, the lyrics, like, so far this first verse, I'm on a rock somewhere, we know that means Earth, right? It's the only one I know it well, and somehow I know you're there, and I'm waiting on the world. I'm ringing the old church bell. I've forgotten how it goes, but it feels like hell. Sorry to pick up on that line every time. The rhyme just really annoys me. I guess you're in heaven now and you're never coming home. Everything is so vague. Everything there could just apply to anyone in any situation. That is actually a problem with lyrics. There needs to be some kind of, like, universalist message with specificities, right? So I should give some examples. I'm trying to think of some universalist songs now. So Imagine by John Lennon is, like, probably the most famous one. Certain songwriters just like the universalist themes and they go back to them repeatedly. I think John Lennon's one of them. You know, All You Need Is Love is another one. Give Peace a Chance, I think, is a bit like that. Bob Marley as well, I think, quite like that, those kind of themes. Stevie Wonder has a tendency towards these big universalist themes. Michael Jackson has his moments, I think, you know, songs a bit like that. Man in the Mirror. I don't know, we should probably just pick one example, right? One Love, right? That's like one of the first ones that comes to my mind of a song with, like, universalist themes. Like, okay, going straight for the big cliches there, Jacob. By the way, if you're new to this channel, I'm also called Jacob. I'm not talking about Jacob Collier, I'm talking about me. Get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. There's like a straightforward simplicity in that, right? There's like a physicality of, like, let's get together and feel alright. That's just, it could just, again, it could apply to anyone, but this is like the brilliance of it, right? You write a song that could apply, or like it can resonate with anyone. It resonates with me, and I, in a way, do not fit with the ideologies or, like, spiritual religious beliefs of this song at all. Hear the children crying, one love. Hear the children crying, one heart. Saying, give thanks and praise to the Lord and I will feel all right. So this is a religious song. This is a Christian song, right? Bob Marley is Rastafarian, was Rastafarian. There's no two ways about it, right? And he makes it very explicit in his songs. And even though I'm not Rastafarian or Christian or religious in any way whatsoever, frankly, I think it's all a little bit silly, but that doesn't mean it can't resonate with me, because I you know, it's about the conviction of it and, like, how well you articulate the ideas. And it being a specifically Rastafarian thing means it's grounded in some kind of, like, specific culture, right? Whereas if we go back to Jacob Collier, well, this might just seem like I'm going into way too much, like, analytical detail here, and it's just a bit silly, but it is one of the biggest issues with his songwriting, that there's nothing really specific to ground it somewhere. And when he does try to do that, maybe we'll get onto this later, I think he's still not good at it. See the people come and go. This is a random verse, I can't remember where in the song it says. See the people come and go, and they go so well. They count the coins back there. It's the only thing they know. Oh, human greed. Oh, let's bring that into it. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with that topic. And, you know, he's brought in a specific imagery of counting the coins. But again, it's so applicable to every time and place, which is actually, I've seen some people recommend that as a songwriting technique. It's terrible. Don't do it. Please, to anyone else out there who writes songs. Not that I have any evidence to show you that I'm a good songwriter, but just, you know, this is true. It's true of poetry or literature or film or songwriting, right? Just don't make everything so general all the time that can just apply to anything, unless you're very good at bringing in some level of specificity, right? Stevie Wonder, what's that Stevie Wonder song? Heaven is 10 zillion light years away. Again, is so grounded in Stevie Wonder's Christian religiosity. They say that heaven is. That there's no mistaking what his beliefs are. If you're going for this generalist thing, and you're being so earnest like Jacob Collier is, and he has, like, clearly has a philosophy of life that informs all the music he does, you need to be upfront in some way about, like, where you're coming from, right? Not just super vague and everything applies to everything. And there's nothing wrong if that's, like, completely secular or irreligious. That's fine. That's Imagine, right? Imagine imagine no religion. That's what it says. Straight in there with that, right? And completely unashamed about it. Nothing wrong with earnest universalist themes, but you need something specific going on, something to ground it. Otherwise, it feels cheap. It does feel cheap, and I think, unfortunately... Anyway, Jacob Collier's lyrics are not that important, really. Like, we're not listening to his lyrics, and the people who like his music aren't really into the lyrics. That's not his skill set. But if you're going to do lyrics, and your lyrics are just kind of failing your music, I do think it becomes a problem at that point. Anyway, sorry. We'll edit that down to make it seem a bit more sensible. Hopefully, I don't come across as too negative, because again, I think there's a lot to like. Sounds so stupid saying this, man. He's so unbelievable, right? There's clearly so much to appreciate and enjoy in what he does, that even these big criticisms shouldn't really get in the way of us trying to... If you're a musician yourself, trying to learn something from him, I mean, you could probably take one song. I could probably just take one song and just study that for the rest of my life, and I would still be learning something from it in like 20 years' time. It's incredible, right? Anyway, I think I'm only being so critical of Jacob Collier because my expectations are quite high because he is so good. So, excuse me while I do say what I'm about to say. All great art in history, it has that kind of specificity to it. And yes, I am talking about Jacob Collier in the context of all the greatest art in history ever because he's that good. And that's kind of what my expectation ends up being. It doesn't matter whether it's like Shakespeare or Dante or like Kubrick films or like Bach, Beethoven, the music of the Beatles, whatever it is, right? There's something so specific about what they're doing, even when they're doing these big universalist themes or films or ideas that can just apply to anything and resonate with anyone anywhere. If you just go for the big generalities, little blue, be my anchor, be my light, my compass star, be my darkness, be my danger. I don't know, I just feel like you're missing an opportunity there to just ground it in something more specific. And I've heard him talk about things and like read interviews with him, like he's into these big universalist, like, grandiose exclamations about what his music is. I've heard him talk about like the universal or collective consciousness, and he's giving voice to that or something, which is just like wacky nonsense. But it's fine, that's how some people express themselves, whatever. You might not agree that that's wacky nonsense, but it's very hard to make good art, I think. And again, this is just all my taste, right? I hate prefacing things with that, but it goes without saying, right? Okay, this is all just my taste. Anyway, so I don't know. We'll get off the lyrics thing. In a way, it's just not really important with Jacob Collier, but his lyrics, that I do think, the point here I've made a long time to make it is that I do think his lyrics are actively detrimental to his art, which is a shame. We don't want that, right? We want lyrics to, at the very least, not get in the way, but they do get in the way a little bit, and it's a shame. So halfway through recording the video, I remembered I actually had things to do. So this is now the day after, and I'm gonna wrap it up. So far, I've just kind of like talked generally and a bit specifically about some things. But basically, I think you either agree with me or you don't. But I think most people are gonna be able to see either perspective. You kind of either love Jacob Collier's music, or you hate his music, or you're ambivalent. And I know that I've just described basically all the options there, but I do think it's very like strongly like dichotomized these reactions to it. Polarized, I guess, is a better word. But I think most people are in the middle, actually. I think most people kind of see the good things and the bad things. But let's dive into like why I think the explanation I might offer for like why he's so successful at certain things and quite poor at other things. It's pointless just listen to more music, but like we'll listen to some of the things he said about his process and his thoughts about music, and I think I will offer an explanation which is probably, in my mind, I think is quite accurate, but we'll find out, and you'll see. You'll have to make your mind up whether I'm talking shit or not. So we're going to start with a video of him. Jacob Collier explains music in 5 levels of difficulty, featuring Herbie Hancock. No idea who that is. Never heard of him. So I've got a note here that kind of the point I want to make is at 2 minutes 30. I can't really remember what it is. Let's find out, right?
Hello everybody, my name is Jacob Collier and I'm a musician.
Level 1, child. That's me. I've been a little bit unfair on myself. I'm pretty good. I'm a good guitarist. You know, I can play a lot. I've been playing for ages. I find the key to being a good musician is just taking this attitude to just always learning. You're like a forever student, right? So, I've been playing for ages and I'm pretty excellent, right? But I learned something new the other day that actually kind of blew my mind a little bit. You get these things called sus chords, and I'd never heard of these before. These are crazy. So in my understanding, you get a sus4 chord and a sus2 chord, right? So that's A sus4 and an A sus2 chord. Now, the naming convention is a little weird because, yeah, sus. So obviously sus stands for suspicious, but you're not suspicious for something, you should be suspicious of something. So the preposition there is a little bit mixed up, doesn't make any sense, but that's fine. A suspicious for chord, don't know what it's suspicious for, and a suspicious to chord. And that's a little different because we have the suspicious for chord, right? But in this chord it's just saying, yes, I'm suspicious too, I'm suspicious as well. And my understanding is that they're suspicious because they're not major or minor, so they kind of sound a little sussy, right? Bit of a question mark there, isn't it? Okay, sus2. I'm suspicious as well. Yeah, that's fair enough. Now, they sound cool. I like these chords, but I've not found a use for them yet. I don't really know how you'd actually put them in a song. It's my understanding that no one has actually found a use for them yet. They're just these like hypothetical suspicious chords that just kind of, they're out there. I assume they were like invented or discovered by some like crazy jazzer. But yeah, they get used in jazz a bit, but that's not the same as music. I don't think any musicians use them, but I'm going to work on them over the next week. Maybe I'll find some kind of like application for them. Who knows? Maybe not. They might just be unusable. Who knows? Anyway.
Have you ever heard a song called Amazing Grace?
No.
He's never heard of Amazing Grace. What an idiot, man. What an idiot.
Essentially what harmony is it's like a language, right? And so, as with any language, the more words you're capable of speaking in a language, the more you can say. Right, so
I think I'm remembering what I wanted to say. So these like super hyper competent music guys, I mean, it's true, like they love saying this. You hear it all the time from like Victor Wooten and all the jazzers, like Berkeley school people, and it's 100% true. It's a great way to think about it. Music is a language, but remember, always keep in mind, music is two things. Music is a language and it is an art form, and it's not. It feels like sometimes people forget and they think that developing their skill set in one is the same as developing their skill set in the other. So if you're better at music as a language, you're inherently better at music as an art form. Let's just listen to a bit more. I feel like there's some other point to be made in a second, and we'll kind of expand upon that.
in harmony, this might be how many notes you can think to add to a chord to make it feel a different way. Have you ever heard of the circle of fifths? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. On one side... He's suppressing anger there by the looks of it. Yes, I've heard of the circle of fifths. He is a music student. But yeah, sorry. So this idea that like the more words you know, the more you can express. Obviously, that's kind of true because there is like very specialist words that, for example, that you need to express very specific ideas, like whether that's in like, I don't know, a specialist domain like philosophy or science or whatever. And it's very hard to express that without that very specific bit of vocabulary. But it comes back to what I just said, right? Where music is an art form and music is a language. And if we think, right, let's think of music next to like literature, right? Literature is an art form and then language is the language. So like the analogy here is in music, we use the same word music. We use it for the language of music and the art form of music, right? Music. But in literature, we use two different words. What we call we call the art form literature, and we use the language that we write that literature in. We just call it language, right? It might be the English language, French language, or whatever. So in literature, it's really clear that these are two very closely related things, but technically separate. And you could be really, really good at speaking a language and have like a really wide vocabulary and a really good understanding of grammar, blah, 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 while being really bad at writing literature. So for example, I think I'm pretty good at the English language, but I'm really bad at, well, I just don't do it. I don't write poetry. That's why I'm really bad, right? Because it would take practice. You got to practice it. And I could get better and better at speaking the English language and learn more and more words, but that's not going to make me a better poet. Poetry is a different skill set. And there are people out there who speak English less well than I do, who are way better at writing poetry than I do. And in fact, you could be really good at writing poetry, but really bad at writing, I don't know, essays or short stories or novels. And you could be really good at writing novels, but really bad at writing drama. You could be really good at writing drama, but only in one way. You could be really good at comedy, but really bad at tragedy, something like that. There's all of these independent skill sets. And I do feel, as I said before, all these like hyper competent musicians, like your Victor Wooten, Guthrie Govan, they're everywhere in jazz, right? These guys are incredible. Jacob Collier is clearly one of them. Chris Tile, he's one of them. They, I think sometimes in their mind it is as simple as you just get really good at the language. Maybe I'm not psychic, right? But it does feel like they've gotten really good at the language of music, and that's great. And there's so much to learn from these people, but they're not necessarily very good at the specific types of art form that are music, right? So they might not be good at writing a pop song or writing lyrics or something, like things that are like more individual skill sets within that kind of broader umbrella of music, right? Because they're two different skill sets. So yes, in a way, with all other things being equal, the wider vocabulary in music is just going to help you write better music. You should always want to learn more, right? That's great. That's me with my suspicious chords, right? Great. Glad I've learned them now. I'll try to use them. But that by itself is not going to make you write a better song. And this is this is where I'll bring in one of my general points that I want to make. I think it's because songwriting is a generalist skill set. I don't think you just get better at songwriting by becoming a better musician. I don't think there's a single great songwriter in the history of music that is purely a great musician. Because if we're talking about people who are great musicians who live for music, again, we're talking about the people I just named before, right? And there are all these hyper competent people. It could be Bela Fleck, it could be Herbie Hancock. These are great musicians. Jacob Collier, Chris Tile. Some people really like Chris Tile's songwriting, but I'm just going to put it out there. I think he's a terrible songwriter. He's particularly bad when it comes to lyrics, just like Jacob Collier. Although, interestingly, he doesn't get anywhere near as much like stick as Jacob Collier does. But these people, Victor Wooten could be pretty shocking, actually. Just write these really uninteresting like compositions, and he will occasionally attempt to write like lyrical ideas which just fall completely flat or just downright off-putting. And it's because they're super specialists within the realm of music, which is great. It's like a different vision of what a musical artist is. But songwriting is a generalist skill set. Stakes, what are the stakes of the song, right? Your stake, like what is on the line, cannot be just, Coltrane changes or secondary dominance or tritone substitutions or weird modulations. That there's no stakes, right? Songwriting is about humanity and human stuff, like success and failure and tragedy and death and love and relationships and all this messy crap. And these people just live for music, and I sometimes feel like there's just nothing else going on that they can put into their music. And there must be some other stuff going on. I'm sure Jacob Collier has relationships and friendships, but it just doesn't seem to inform his music as far as I can tell. Or maybe he's just, what I said earlier, it's a separate skill set. Articulating that stuff through music in the form of a song is a separate skill set to just being a good musician. So he must have all this other stuff going on, but it just doesn't seem to appear in his music. Maybe he's trying to, but it just doesn't appear there. And he's just going for these big universalist themes. Whereas, again, it's really hard to just, it's really weird sometimes or silly to make comparisons with other people, because one artist is always going to do something that someone else isn't doing, and that doesn't make them better inherently. But I don't know, Joni Mitchell, Stevie Wonder, we can just name all these great songwriters, right, who are also technically accomplished musicians, and it's always something really big and profound that informs their music that isn't just music. It might be politics or religion, it might be their relationships or all these other things. And with Jacob Collier, it just ends up feeling vapid. It ends up feeling what I would call monocultural. So when I say that, I mean, in a way, someone might object to say it's not monocultural because it brings in all this different music from across all the cultures of the world. But it's monocultural in that it is just music. It's not cinematic. There's not sophisticated. No, there's not even sophisticated. There's not no real understanding of narrative form or literariness or cinematic ideas. Did I say that already? I don't know. All these different things that other artists use to inform their songwriting. You see none of that in Jacob Collier. And it just, for me, I didn't realize that I cared about this stuff until I kind of heard Jacob Collier, and I was like, why do I feel like something's missing? He's doing so many things that I feel like I should love, and so many things I do love. Why do I feel like something's missing? It's well, actually, maybe I don't like music for the sake of music, right? There's no stakes in it otherwise. And again, someone might sit there and think, well, does that mean you think it needs lyrics? It's not necessarily about lyrics. It turns out instrumental music
no lyrics, that I feel those stakes are in there. And I do think it's because something outside of music is informing the kind of, I don't know, like the narrative arc of that work. It's something, it's not just music for the sake of music. If it's like, I don't know, Bach or something like that, like religion informed everything he did. If it's, I don't know, it could be jazz, all these, so much early and, I guess still contemporary jazz is informed by the fact that, these, a lot of black musicians in America, it's informed by that experience. It just is, it undeniably is. And that kind of, it's very hard to articulate and sometimes like pin down, but all these different things just really impact like how you're writing music and how you're composing music and your approach to music. And I feel like these super, super specialist musicians can end up falling flat when they're trying to like put out these compositions or bits of songwriting. And I feel like the reason people like Victor Wooten or Guthrie Govan, who have these similar problems in my mind to Jacob Collier, don't get anywhere near as much stick as him, is because they kind of stay in their lane, right? For the most part, they're instrumentalists and they play music and they don't really try to write songs, or their audience is so specialist that no one's really exposed to it, and most people, like most normies who just want to hear a good song, are never going to hear a Victor Wooten album or a Guthrie Govan composition and say like, oh, well, it's just not resonating with me. Whereas something about Jacob Collier, he's managed to work the algorithm in a way. Well, that's not fair, not work the algorithm. He's been successful via the algorithm, promoted himself well. So everyone's exposed to it, and then everyone's like, oh, not everyone, but a lot of people feel like it's a bit vapid or actively annoying. And yeah, he's kind of a victim of his own success, that he's this hyper specialist musician going out of his lane maybe a little bit. Not that he has to respect the idea of lanes, right? He doesn't have to stay in his lane. I just don't think it's his skill set. I don't know, it's a bit rambling. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on. Here's another little clip we'll watch. I've put a little note, it's just a link I've put in my notes to a YouTube short, and it says, "This shows how fucking clueless he is." I'm probably being unfair. I don't know. I don't take these notes seriously. You shouldn't take them seriously either. Don't take me seriously.
It's one of the troubling things about 2023. I mean, there are lots of great things about 2023 in terms of making music, but I think people are making music to conform to the technology. And that's so problematic because historically, forever and ever, not just music, but the whole of language has always bent, where necessary, to sort of examine or exaggerate parts of the human experience. And so the fact that the human experience is being kind of like buttoned up for, these algorithms or the whatever happens to be, these systems, these instruments, these softwares, technologies, apps and stuff, I think whilst it's extremely connective and exciting, it's also kind of terrifying because that's not the right way around, like.
What? I feel like he's just not making a point here, really. And insofar as he is making a point, I just think it's completely wrong. Making art, what was it? I can't remember the exact wording. Making art that conforms to technology. That's always happened. Whether that's like the technology of the album. I just did a video about that. No one watched it, so please go watch it. But artists conform to the reality of the technology of an album. Radio format was super important. That completely informed like all music, popular music, particularly that was written from like, I don't know, like the 30s maybe, or slightly earlier, all the way to maybe like the turn of the century, maybe to now. It's so huge. And then MTV format informed, and it didn't stop people from making great music. In fact, it probably helped them make great music by structuring it and like putting limits on what they could do. What else? I mean, he was talking about language and art generally, right? But the printing press, that's a huge technological change, and that had huge impact upon language and literature. The reality of digital formats for books and music. Everyone always works to the technology. It's a ridiculous thing for him to say. Maybe my note was right. Like he's just completely wrong here. I have no idea like maybe there's something I'm missing, but he's just making a terrible point, and he's dressed silly as well. Ugh.
Humans need to be humans, and then
Yeah, humans are humans. Everything humans do is what humans do by definition, right? Maybe I'm being uncharitable here, but like working to the technological limits of the time is not less human than not working to the limits. What? Cave painting, like technological limits, right? What? Like, what are we talking about here? Yeah, you can push those limits. That's how things work. That's how technological advancement and innovation works. But we're always working to limits, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how things work. What is he trying to say? It sounds like a lot of like pseudo profound nonsense to me, to be quite frank, to be blunt. I do like the guy. He's cool. He's earnest and nice. I like him, but what the fuck is he talking about?
the language that we operate and communicate with needs to be bendy and somewhat made up.
It is all made up. That's fine. Yeah.
You know, like I used to spend a lot of my childhood like just making up words to express things, you know, like, because sometimes if you make up a word, it says it better than a real word. But in the world of like autocorrect and spell check, it's like, that's not a word.
Right. Okay. Sometimes I feel this quite often. I feel like musicians might be the stupidest smart people on the planet. Has this guy read? He's not read his Wittgenstein. He's not read any Wittgenstein, and that is humiliating, right? So there's this thing in the philosophy of language, this idea of a private language, and the point is kind of to completely overgeneralize it, that a private language isn't really a language, and so. And maybe I'm being really uncharitable here when I say this. He's being super earnest, and maybe this is just a bit unfair. I don't think it is though. Like, if you make up a word to express something, then it's not really a word unless other people know it and understand it and also use it. This is a private language thing. A language used by one person isn't really a language. You're just saying sounds, and maybe you feel like you're expressing something, but it's not really a language because you need other people to communicate with it, right? It's nothing. It's just a kind of empty signifier. So, I've got a new word to express sadness, and it's bleep bloop. That's not a word, that's a sound. If you find that expresses it really well for yourself, that's great. It's not a word. But this goes to the heart of like his attitude towards music, right? Like the technological point, I have no idea what he's talking about, but I get how it fits in with this. You can just express anything and there's no limitations and blah, blah, blah. But there are, like, you are working to limitations as well, although you're probably the least limited person when it comes to music, expression and vocabulary ever, but there's still limitations. And this language thing, I feel like it probably does inform a lot of the music he's making. You know, you can just make up things, and that is 100% true. And I think he's probably more successful with that than he was making up words as a child. But it's still it's way off base. It's not a language. It's not really a word. It's just a sound. I would recommend he just goes away and he reads some Wittgenstein. Maybe he could check out the Wikipedia page for Wittgenstein, just read a bit about the philosophy of language. I think it would probably do him a lot of good. But again, I feel like I just want to come back to this theme of, it's kind of the point, right? The fact that he is so earnest and arguably so clueless about so much stuff outside of music is a large part of why he is so enthusiastic about music, why he got so good at music, right? You know, it's the kind of eternal dynamic between generalism and specialism. Like, he's a hyper specialist, and that is how he is so good at music, and it is amazing. But then it's kind of unsurprising that you might be a little bit clueless outside of music, because we can't know everything. We only have a limited amount of time. Although don't tell Jacob Collier that, like, as far as he's concerned, there are no limitations. Or I don't know. That's probably an unfair framing of what he thinks. But yeah, it's kind of the point, right? People like his music and people hate his music for the same kind of reason. Like, it's overly earnest, hyper specialized, arguably a bit vapid, monocultural, deeply impressive, hyper competent, universalist message kind of thing. And that's either going to be a bit of a turn off, or it's going to be absolutely, completely up your street. And again, my vision for music and art is clearly very different to his. Maybe he's right because he's way better at music than I am, but I can only basically speak my mind on this, right? I think even that stuff ties in with the taste thing that I said earlier. Like, taste is so completely, what's the word? it's almost whimsical. It's completely arbitrary. That's the word. It's just our personal taste. Like when it comes to food, there are some things I just don't like. There's not much I don't like. I don't like tinned sweet corn. That's hyper specific, right? But I just don't like it. There's no logical reason for it. And it's the same with music. There's some, I don't know, types of music when the chord changes get too wacky and a bit too kind of like, I guess in my mind, to my untrained ear, just like random like dissonances or just half resolving to things. So I get it to a point, but it's just not to my taste. Jacob's taste, well, he's tasteless. He has no sense of taste because it all sounds great to him. And, you know, he revels in all of it. And, you know, his kind of thing that he always comes back to is that, you know, there are no rules. There are no rules for music. Do whatever you want. And he's completely right. But that kind of leaves you a little bit like directionless or formless. And I know intellectually that there are no rules. However, the closest thing to rules that I do kind of stick to is my taste. And I have this taste which says, I don't like that. I don't like these sorts of lyrics. I don't like this sort of like guitar tone or whatever. And most musicians have that, where even if they intellectually understand there are no rules, you can do whatever you want, their taste essentially gives them rules. Like, I'm not going to do this because I don't like this sound. I don't like this style. And that will inform my music, basically in the form of rules. Because although they understand there are no rules, the music police aren't going to be knocking at the door saying, for anything you do. Their taste effectively becomes that. Jacob Collier doesn't have taste in the way that we have taste. He just does not have it. And again, it all comes back and wraps up into that wider point of just like, if he had any taste, and again, I want to be clear, I'm not saying he has bad taste, I'm saying he has no taste. It's a different thing, and it's probably completely unique, or almost completely unique in like the history of music. Because, you know, I don't know, Miles Davis hated some music. Every great musician I can think of, like that I've read about, hated some music. Beethoven had really strong tastes. Mozart had really strong tastes about what was good and what was bad, and I hate this and hate that. And I love this. And you know, you go through history, I can't think of anyone who would ever just be like, "Oh, music is great. There's no such thing as good music or bad music," except Jacob Collier. And that's what makes him so unique, right? That's the point. And the people who hate his music and the people who love his music should find common ground on that. Like, that is the point. He has no taste, and that's fine. That's great. But also, it's not great. It's not good. He doesn't have that barrier. Taste is like structure and is rules in a way, but it's also a barrier. He doesn't have that editing filter in the same way that other people have. He must have it to some degree, but I just don't think it's as formative or as like foundational for him as it is for other people. His question isn't like, should this be done, but like, can I do it? Which again, that's the appeal. And it's also what's a bit of a turn off. Anyway. I don't have much more to say. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is a pointless video. I thought I would make it though. At the very least, hopefully, maybe I've asked some interesting questions and maybe you have opinions that completely differ to mine, but I would be interested in hearing them. Maybe it's just a waste of time and effort for me to go into this much detail. Anyway, thanks for watching. This is very different to the usual kind of things I do, which are a bit more structured and composed and worked out. But I thought I'd give it a go. See you around.